the Pledge of Allegiance, and for reasons that will become obvious later, we're going to ask Mr. Sioris to start us and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Planning Board continues to offer remote participation from cyberspace. So if you want to participate, you can use your computer or smart device to go to www.zoom.us. The meeting ID is 754-663-912. Or you can call in by phone. One of the phone numbers is 646-558-8655, and the meeting ID is the same, 754-663-912. If you're on a computer on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand button to be recognized. If you're on the phone, do a *9 to raise your hand to be recognized, and then eventually when you are recognized, a *6 to unmute yourself. At this point, I will introduce the staff and members who are present this evening. To my far right is Mr. Sioris, our planning director.
Good evening.
Ms. Carvello, our administrative secretary.
Ms. Wilson.
Wilson? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Good evening.
And Ms. Carvello is our clerk, and she's at somewhere else, and she's going to be transcribing this from the tape. So I'm going to ask everyone to enunciate in the microphone and make sure she can get those minutes accurately. Mr. Chase, who is the town administrative representative.
Good evening.
Mr. Healy.
Good evening.
Mr. Grinis, who is the town council liaison.
Good evening.
Mr. O'Connor, who is our vice chair.
Good evening, all.
To the far side is Mr. Preventure, who is the video wizard. Mr. LaRue, who is from the town's engineering department.
Good evening.
Lavoy, who is our alternate.
Good evening.
Who I will ask to sit for Mr. Myers, who is absent tonight. Then we have Mr. Fishman.
Good evening.
We have Mr. Feinauer.
Good evening.
We have Mr. Malaby, who is our secretary.
Hello.
And I'm Dave Nelson, I'm the chair. So first item on our agenda is matters of escrow. Mr. Sioris, would you introduce them?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First one is escrow number 2422. The project name is the Residence of Sky. This is called Keystone Dairy LLC. The escrow amount is a letter of credit. The address is 74 Rockingham Road. For the new members, this is a mixed-use housing, office, and residential building on Rockingham Road. As you get east towards Clam Haven, it's on the north side of Rockingham Road on the curve there near Winter Hill. The purpose of the action request is please establish escrow joint on Enterprise Bank note number 48759-1 in the amount of $1,359,884.20 for the above noted project. This escrow is non-interest bearing. This letter of credit shall expire on July 12, 2026. And it's been signed by Mike Fowler, Mark LaRue in Public Works, Mark Fleischer, Finance Director, and myself, and staff would recommend approval.
What is the board's
Mr.
pleasure?
Chair, I so move.
Second. It has been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malamy to approve the escrow action as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grinis.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Okay, next one, number 2423. Again, project name is Ball Farm Heights. The developer is East Winfield Realty LLC. This is a cash escrow. I'm sorry, this is a, this was a check. Yeah, cash escrow. The address is 82 English Range Road for the new members. That's a 3-lot subdivision. One of the house lots is going to be the family house, which has been subdivided off the old Don Ball property. There will be one new single-family building lot, and then the third lot is conservation land. The town council will be closing on that property this week for conservation land. That's up near the J&F Farms, if you know that area of town. So the action requested, please establish escrow drawn on Salem Cooperative Bank, check number 1925 in the amount of $17,997.50 for the above noted project. This escrow is non-interest bearing, and again, it's been signed by Mike Fowler, Mark LaRue, Public Works, our CFO, Finance Director, and myself. Staff would recommend approval.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby to approve the escrow action as presented. We'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Okay, next one is escrow number 2424. This is a subdivision down on 356 Island Pond Road. It's a two-lot subdivision. The developer is Red Tundra LLC, cash escrow. Action requested, please release escrow drawn on Bank of America in the amount of $16,122.24 for the above noted project. The amount to be retained is $4,276.80. The escrow is a non-interest bearing account. And again, it's been signed by Mike Fowler, Mark LaRue, Bob Mackey, Building Inspector, and myself, and staff would recommend approval.
Mr. Chair, I so moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have two before us, the minutes of the public hearing of July 17th. We'll take that up first. Does anyone have a chance to review that?
Mr. Chair, if none of the members are rising for either corrections within the meetings, then I'll move to approve as is.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malamy to approve the minutes of July 17th, 2024 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Malaby abstains, everyone else votes aye. Next item is the site walk notes for July 31st, 2024. You have in your package the original notes plus an amendment that captured some of the issues that were requested after the conclusion of the July 17th meeting. So what's the board's pleasure?
Waiting to see if anybody from the board raises. If not, then I move to accept the minutes of the site walk as written.
As presented and
As presented, yes.
tonight. Okay. Moved by O'Connor,
Second.
second by Malaby. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions?
I abstain. I wasn't able to make that.
Ms. Lavoy abstains. Everyone else votes in the affirmative. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. Mr. Malaby.
Mr. Chair, it pleases me greatly to say we do have some correspondence. We have a letter from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. They're soliciting projects to be included in their 10-year transportation improvement plan. For anybody who would like to know a little bit more, they're welcome to see George, at least for the next 2 weeks, Mr. CORS. But they do have in here, they do have an itemized list of the projects they're looking at now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Under other business, we have some approval extension requests.
Yep, okay. First one is, first request, it is for, you don't need to be read into the record. Do you want me to just summarize it real quick, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
summarize
yeah.
really quick.
This is the site plan that got approved for the Common Man Roadside Restaurant. Again, for the new members, this is the old Wendy's on Crystal Avenue. It's been purchased by Common Man Roadside. It'll be a gas station and a Common Man convenience takeout food. So they're moving forward. They hope to get to us back in September to get the plan signed, but they would like an additional 6 more months. That would give their extension good until February 21st, 2025. Staff would recommend the approval to extend.
Okay. What is the board's pleasure?
I believe a George question is to make sure this will be the first.
First one, yeah. So the first one, the board automatically grants the first one. Yeah.
Then I would move to accept to go to a 6-month extension.
Okay.
Is that going to be sufficient?
Yeah, we spoke to Nicole Duquette really quickly, the engineer representing the common man. They're close to getting their plans complete. They're going to get the escrow, so I would say yes, they're moving quickly.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, move the motion to approve a 6-month extension of the conditional approval granted to PID 31043, 56 Crystal Avenue on February 21st, 2024. The new expiration date will be February 21st, 2025.
Second.
I
It's
so
been
move.
moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby to grant a 6-month extension. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Okay, next one, Mr. Chairman, same thing, it's the first request. This is for a 2-lot, single-family development down on 112 North Shore Road. This is down by Island Pond, that Route 111 area. The owners are Heather Davis. They have completed all their survey plans. We have the revised plans in the office. They just need to establish escrow. Same thing, they're asking for 6 additional months. The expiration date would be March 6, 2025. Staff would recommend to extend for 6 more months.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve a 6-month extension of the conditional approval granted on March 6, 2024 to PID 18001, 112 North Shore Road. The new expiration date will be March 6, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Okay, and the last one, same thing, their first request, this is the Derry Plumbing and Heating Site Plan. For the new members, this is at the corner of Birch Street and Kennel Pond Road across from the Safeway and Rite Aid Pharmacy on the corner down at Kennel Pond. Same thing, they're moving forward. They've asked for 6 more months, so the expiration date would be March 20th, 2025. Staff would recommend again approval of the extension.
Board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, seeing no one having questions, then I move to make a motion to approve a 6-month extension of the conditional approval granted on March 20th, 2024 to PID 28002, 71 Birch Street. The new expiration date will be March 20th, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby to approve as presented. We'll poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Ms. Lavoy.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So the next item on our agenda is Planning Director and Chairman updates.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna make this real brief. As you know,
Ever.
I sometimes talk too much, or I go the other way, and I can't
keep
talk.
going.
But as you know, I'm retiring. In 2 weeks, I'll be finishing my career here after 40 years as the planning director. So I just want to say thank you to this board. I'm not just saying this. This has been one of the best boards I've had in the last couple of years. To a person, it's been great. You're very professional, and it makes my job easier and the staff. So I just want to thank everybody. It's hard to, I don't want to forget anybody, but it's been a great career. I'm looking forward to retirement. We've done a lot of work on these boards over the years, and 40 years on master plans and zoning changes and projects that are really good. Some are controversial. I try to be professional and try to be fair to people, and I want to thank everybody to a person, the new members. Welcome aboard. Brittany, I think you're going to like it, and Brian. And I want to thank Owen and Mark in Public Works and his staff, Mike Fowler and others, and Caroline, the new member, and Liz will be coming back in 2 weeks, so it'll be a smooth transition, and I just want to, again, thank everybody. So.
All right, so my update is two-part. One, I need to remind everyone in the public that we still have 2 alternate vacancies, and I invite everyone to see how much fun we're having here and go onto the town's website and send in an application. We would be happy to entertain that. The second one is during member comments. I'm going to invite everyone on the board to share stories and remembrances and thank yous and kudos with Mr. Sioris after we conduct our regular business, and we can get him all embarrassed and all,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, whatever. Okay?
No.
Next item on the agenda is a continuation of a public hearing from July 17th, 2024, FW Holdings LLC, parcel ID 320715 Mount Pleasant Street, a two-lot subdivision. So where we left this, we had a site walk.
Yep.
We approved the notes of that. We continued the application until tonight, since we have new information that occurred during the site walk, and we have the applicant's attorney here to discuss new information with us. I would seek a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Grenice to reopen the public hearing. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, the public hearing is reopened, and I see that we have someone, the attorney, who did send us a memo that is in your packet, in a billetized packet and fashion, and he's going to walk us through that.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Chris Swiniarski. I'm an attorney from Divine Millimet, representing FW Holdings LLC, the applicant. John Fillion and Zach Witten are here with me as well. They are the principals of the applicant, and if you want, they can fill the vacancies on the board for the alternate members tonight if you're looking for them to jump in. But guessing you
Well,
probably don't
they have
want to
go
do it
through
that way.
the process, and the council has to appoint them, but
I
thank
know.
you.
I'm kidding, obviously. So, as you all probably know, our project engineer, Matt Peterson, presented this application at the June meeting, I think it was. Matt's not able to be here tonight. I did watch that meeting on the town's channel, and I think the gist that I gathered from that was that the issues that are still sort of open right now are the two waiver requests, and that's what I came here to discuss tonight. And the memo that I submitted is really just, it's a copy of my notes. It's the notes I'm using too. I just thought it would be a little bit easier if you had them, and you could probably follow along a little bit easier, because it is a little bit complex, I'd say. So with that, I'll just jump right in. The two waivers that were requested as part of the application, as you know, are section 170-25A5. That's for the requirement for a separate driveway for the lot. This is a two-lot subdivision. And then the second waiver was from section 170-26D4, and that is for your required stopping site distance that is based on the 1990 AASHTO standards. And if it becomes helpful in that memo, I did copy and paste the exact language from your regulations. In case that becomes helpful, you'll have it right in front of you. The first thing, as I was analyzing this, the first thing that occurred to me is really what this is it's one waiver or the other. It's not really both. I can't really see a conceivable way that both waivers are needed. So, if the board were to grant the first waiver, not requiring a separate driveway, then I don't see how the waiver for the stopping site distance requirement could be applicable. Because by granting the first waiver, what we're saying is that we're going to use the existing driveway on the other lot in the two-lot subdivision. Now, that existing driveway predates, I believe, all of your zoning regulations, certainly your subdivision regulations, so it would not be subject to the current subdivision regulations. And even if it was, I mean, it's existing, so we can't apply a law to something that lawfully exists. That's not constitutional. So if, there's really no way to analyze that another way, I don't think. And I really racked my brain on that, but I just don't see it. And separately, or the flip side to that, is that if the board were to not grant the waiver for the requirement for a separate driveway, then the stopping site distance requirement would obviously apply to the new driveway that would have to be built, because that's a new driveway, and that's what the regulation applies to. So, and another threshold issue to raise, which is in my memo as well, is a concept in the law that these specific two regulations can't be read in a vacuum. We always have to read laws, regulations, ordinances, statutes within the context of the entire body. And that's well-settled law, and I think for the most part, common sense. In this case, your land development control regulations, they don't stand alone. Those are authorized by the enabling statute, and that's RSA 674-36. So your regulations are subject to that statute, have to follow that statute. And they do, and that much is also stated in your regulations as well. What's important to note in that statute is that the waiver process is an absolute requirement of any subdivision regulations anywhere in the state of New Hampshire. And that is important, as you'll see as we go on. And the criteria for granting waivers, it's not purely discretionary. So it's not just a board can decide yes or no, we want to do this or not. There are criteria in the statute. There's also criteria in your regulations, and the two, I wouldn't say conflict. The words are different, but generally they say the same thing. If we're looking at the statute, I put those criteria in italics for you on the second page, because I think the exact words may be useful, they may not. And I'll just go over them very quickly because they're somewhat brief. The first possibility for a waiver is if the board were to find that strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations. So that's one way to grant a waiver. The second way, this is not an and, this is an or, is if the board finds that specific circumstances relative to the subdivision or conditions of the land in such subdivision indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations. Now, those are somewhat broad, somewhat vague concepts, but you guys are experienced planning board members, so you know what that's all about. I don't think we need to get into that discussion. But in light of that statute, some of the discussion I heard in the prior meeting, I don't think stands as a matter of law. I sort of heard the concept that this site distance regulation is something that has always been used in Derry and has never had a problem, and therefore we kind of want to stick to it. That's not what waivers are all about. I mean, when someone requests a waiver, it is the duty of the board to analyze that request with these two state law criteria, or your local criteria, which again I think are about the same. Always safer to do it with the state law criteria, though, in my experience. So with that sort of overview or threshold issues, I'll just jump into the waiver analysis because I don't think those are actually all that complex. The first waiver, which is again waiver of the separate driveway requirement, first thing you have to determine, the first finding of fact that you have to make is whether a hardship exists. I think in this case, the hardship is readily apparent. The lot for which variances were granted could not be buildable unless an additional driveway would be constructed. Now, the variances were granted to allow 22 feet of frontage. The driveway has to be, as I recall, 18 feet wide with 14 feet of pavement. So you're necessarily putting that right near the other driveway. Additionally, a utility pole would have to be moved. So we're talking about one driveway currently exists, adding another driveway right next to it, which requires a utility pole to be moved. We're adding a lot of pavement to a relatively compact neighborhood for no real reason that I can see, at least, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight, to see if in the view of the board members there is some sort of reason. The intent of the regulation is pretty clear. That's to promote safety and to reduce congestion. That's what regulations like this are about. The board, most of you, I think, I recognize some of your faces. can't see very well without my glasses, but I think most of you were at the site visit, and you were able to see the situation with your own eyes, really. So, I always think seeing it in real life, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, certainly a site visit's worth 1,000,000. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The words coming out of my mouth don't matter. You've already seen it in real life. So I think from seeing it, I was there too, it's kind of impossible to articulate and put into a written decision how using that existing driveway is going to create some sort of safety concern or congestion concern. I just don't see it. And again, that's something we could discuss, and I would certainly invite the board to bounce anything off me if you have a concern there. And then if you wanted to apply the second alternative of the state criteria, if you didn't make that finding, it's very clear that this subdivision is unique. You have two lots that satisfy all but the frontage requirements. You have a variance for the frontage requirements, so now the two lots are in compliance. But what's unique is that there's a very suitable driveway that already exists there. It does the job perfectly. So that's pretty unique. That doesn't happen very often, and that's certainly not what subdivision regulations contemplate. It's not a situation that you think of when you're drafting regulations. You're typically, when you're drafting subdivision regulations, you're typically considering new development. So I think right there on that waiver alone, it's a pretty clear-cut case to grant that waiver. Unless you can really find some sort of safety issue, I don't see a way that waiver is not granted. It's very straightforward. But if the board were to disagree and says no, that waiver cannot be granted, then we move on to the second analysis of the waiver of the stopping site distance requirement for a new driveway. And again, I can't see how that would apply to the old driveway if the board did grant the first waiver, because the old driveway predates the regulations, and more importantly, from a logical perspective, it's already there. You can't apply it and make it disappear. So if we look at the criteria again, the hardship here, I think it's more than apparent, it's obvious. The lot becomes unbuildable. If you've said no to the first waiver, and then you say no to the second waiver, you've rendered the lot unbuildable, unless it's going to be accessed by helicopter. There's no way to do it. So when we think about that, I mean, what reasons can we articulate to strictly enforce that requirement for the stopping site distance? The board was there. You saw it with your own eyes. It's hard to say that there's a safety concern there. But even if you do say, well, in my own opinion, there is a safety concern. Okay, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But we also have the current AASHTO regulations that say it's adequate. This design, as our traffic engineer, Bob Bollinger, explained at the last meeting, this design meets the current AASHTO regulations. What it does not meet are the 35-year-old AASHTO regulations, which are what Derry's subdivision regulations are based upon. So right there you have pretty credible evidence that safety is not an issue here. If that's not enough evidence, the idea that safety is an issue is further disproven really by the mere existence of all the other driveways there that are similarly situated. So if one driveway placed there is somehow a safety problem, what do we say about all the other driveways? It's hard to really make a logical conclusion that this driveway can be a safety issue. And then there's sort of one more piece of evidence that sort of wraps that all up. I don't know how long Mount Pleasant Street has been a street, how long it's been developed. It's fairly old, though. And our traffic engineer did some research. We're not able to find any record of any auto accident ever happening on Mount Pleasant Street. So you have a situation that has existed for a long time. What we're asking to do is the same thing that's been there for however long, and that has had no safety issues or concerns. So it's hard to say all of a sudden this new one is going to create that new concern. I think that doesn't really pass the sniff test. On the flip side, you have to consider whether denying the waiver has some sort of benefit to the public, or if there's some sort of public interest in doing so. Again, the safety is the primary component there, and we've already talked about that enough. But what is really the result? If this waiver is denied, the result, again, is you've basically taken a lot that is otherwise in compliance and approved, and you've rendered it unbuildable. But the further problem there is now we're exasperating the housing problem because we've just eliminated the possibility to build a single-family house. And you know, it's easy to say, well, that's one unit, no big deal. But I never look at it that way. I work a lot in this field, obviously, professionally. I volunteer for the planning board in my town, and we face the housing issues like you do. And what most people agree on is that the quote-unquote starter homes, the homes that are at the lower level of the market pricing, that's a critical component to addressing the housing crisis. And the reason for that is we're coming into a situation now where people who are maybe in the beginning of their life and beginning of their income are faced with two choices: expensive apartment or completely unaffordable house. The only solution to that, building more apartments is not a solution. It actually makes the problem worse. The only solution to that is diversity in housing, building more starter homes. Very hard to do that. It's very hard to convince a developer to want to do that because more money can be made on building a more expensive home. So when you don't grant waivers like this, you're basically exacerbating the public problem. You're not causing any sort of benefit to the public whatsoever. So that is how I see it in terms of the legal analysis of the waiver requests. To summarize it, I would again say that waivers are not, they're not like variances. It's not considered an extraordinary remedy. If anything, it's considered very necessary, and it's, of course, very common. I don't know how common you see them in Derry. Doing this all over the state, really all over New England. We see them all the time. And really, I think the statute tells you how important it is. It is a necessary and mandatory thing. It is required in every single subdivision regulation of every single municipality. And the reason for that, I think, is pretty easy to understand. The legislature, both at the state level and at the municipal level, the residents of Derry, people recognize that zoning regulations can't be perfect. If you're going to strictly enforce zoning regulations and not grant waivers, you're always going to run into situations where that application of the subdivision regulations yields a result where a property can't be built, even though it's completely appropriate that it should be built there. And that is the exact opposite of what land use regulations are all about. That is really thwarting the intent of all land use regulations. And that's the case we have here. We have some regulations, but we have a unique situation where if you're to apply those, you're going to end up with a lot that, as you all saw, is pretty perfect for building that very necessary starter housing. And there's no reason for it, because there's no reason to stop that. It's a good thing. It's something that the community and really the society needs. And there's no upside to stopping it. It's a bad idea. So, in summary, I think in my notes I put that what I was discussing before, really, when you deny things like this, it's really a complete perversion of the intent of both your subdivision regulations and of the state's enabling statute. That's the gist of what I have. I'll certainly answer any questions. Have a set of the plans, although usually I like technical questions to be answered by Matt Peterson, the engineer, but I will give it a shot if you have any technical questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Swiniarski. Since we have reopened the public hearing, is there anyone in the audience or online that has any comments or questions regarding this application?
Mr. Chairman? Dave.
Okay, so back to the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just for the record, do you want to, we got an email with some questions from Elizabeth Carver, 15 Lennox Road, who couldn't
Yeah, we
be
do
here
have
tonight.
one written set of comments from a member of the public, so go ahead if
Do
you'd
you
like
want
to.
it into the record?
into the record,
Okay, I think
please.
she, real quick, okay. I think you have this in your packets too. Elizabeth Carver couldn't make it. She's at the farmer's market tonight, but she lives at 15 Lennox Road. She did attend the site walk last week. Just for the record, first of all, thank you for allowing me the airtime to share my comments on this project for the record. After the window for public comment had closed, I realized this is time for you to spend away from your families, and I really appreciate the time and attention you've already given this. I also want to quickly thank anyone and everyone involved in recording and posting these meetings online, because I'm very grateful that there was a recording of the previous meeting that was easy to find and easy to hear. Based on that previous meeting, my understanding is this variance for a shared driveway is needed because the initial variance granted by the ZBA gave the second parcel only exactly enough frontage as is minimally necessary for a driveway, and that the curb cut for that driveway does not meet town safety requirements. My main concern is that this new variance for a shared driveway would be a second variance essentially stacked on top of the initial variance granted by the ZBA. Both variances address the same issue, which is access to the new proposed building. I understand and appreciate the need for variances, as lawmakers can't anticipate everything, and some wiggle room is necessary. It just seems like this request for a second variance around the same issue would create a site that strays too far from the codes we've deemed safe and appropriate for the zone. Mr. LaRue stated at the last meeting that shared driveways are more of a burden on the town. Not only will it be a burden on our shared taxes, but the logistics of sharing a driveway with a neighbor will certainly be a burden on the future residents FW Holdings hopes to sell this property to. I respectfully ask the board to consider this and vote no on this variance. Thank you for your time, all your time. Again, Elizabeth Carver, 15 Lennox Road.
Thank you, Mr. Sears, for reading that. Let me start off with just a couple of thoughts in response to your comments, Mr. Swiniarski, and maybe they'll get some other discussion going on among the board members. With respect to the regulatory purpose of requiring individual driveways in individual frontages, in addition to the congestion and the safety of multiple turning movements in a close proximity, the town has historically found that when two separate landowners have a shared resource, which is the last section of the driveway that intersects the public roadway, there are issues over plowing and repaving and maintenance in general that have caused inter-neighbor discord. And so one of the reasons that we generally require separate driveways is that each has their own driveway, and we don't require them to come to economic agreement on the maintenance of it. So that is something that we should also consider in addition to the traditional safety and congestion issues. With respect to the site distance, I think you said that if we denied the waiver, then the lot became unbuildable. And I just want to offer up the possibility that we haven't really explored, that the deficiency in the regulation we have could be cured by a simple and relatively minor off-site improvement. That was one of the things that we did look at during the site walk. We cited the sidewalk next to the apartments up to the lot line corner stake of 5 Mount Pleasant Street, and determined that most of the grassy knoll that was the site impediment was actually in the town's right-of-way, and therefore available for rational nexus-based off-site improvement. So maybe those things could be thought about as we're asking questions and making other discussion. Other members of the board? Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to follow up on some of the items that you were just mentioning. I have 3 points that I would like to make. First is precedence, that when you drive up and down all of the various streets in that location, that you'll find that there are a minimum at least 4 shared drives within that area. So it's typically available there. The drivers in that area is familiar with that. My second comment, and it's actually going to be directed towards the Divine Millimet lawyer, is that he cited certain regulatory issues. And as a former state rep, one of the issues he didn't mention, and I was curious as to this, was under RSA 236:13. It's only going to take a minute to read an on-run sentence. For the purpose of this section, all season safe site distance, and this is part of the problem that we're discussing against the current law or ordinance that Derry has that was established in 1990, somewhere off of our sites. We didn't see it. And here we are at 2024, reading now the current law that the state has approved. And Derry, our fault for not looking at it, because there's so much that we have to look at, is that, again, the purpose of all season safe site distance is defined as a line which encounters no visual obstruction between 2 points, each at a height of 3 feet 9 inches, which is in contention, above the pavement, and so located as to represent the critical line of sight between the operator of a vehicle using the access and the operator of a vehicle approaching from either direction. And that helps correct of some of the issues. So based on a town engineer requiring to follow current issues, we do have issues that override from a state level to our ordinance here. My last comment, and it's to add in the nice work that our town engineer Mark had put together, is that he lists 5 bullet points that if we were to make various decisions, how we should address them. 3 points on here, I'm not going to read them at this point, because so the board can, come up with their other areas, is that we put 3 of these into the conditional requirements, such as easements and so forth, and that would take care of the issue, so, in my opinion. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll waive my
Any other
time.
members of the board have questions or comments? Mr. Grenice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a comment. So, Mr. O'Connor, you said there's a few shared driveways up on that street?
Yes.
All right, so they're probably predated maybe our ordinance. They might have been before the ordinance. Yeah, so the whole thing with the shared driveway is we're trying to get away from that from the town, as like Mr. Nelson was saying. So I do not believe in shared driveways only because they do cause issues, and that ordinance was put into effect, I forget when, Mr. Cioris?
Probably the late
The
1990s on the shared driveway, maybe,
I
the early
think it was
2000s?
prior to that.
Even prior, yeah.
I think it
According
was,
to the documentation online, it's 1990.
Yeah, so anything that was before that, we can't do anything about, but anytime you go and you want to change an area or redevelop an area, you have to abide by the current regulations. I would like to see a separate driveway for that property. And as far as the 5-foot right-of-way that the town, I believe the town is not going to go and level any land or take care of any right-of-way. Mr. LaRue can probably attest to that also. I mean, everybody in town has a 5-foot right-of-way from the town. But I know that when they come and dig up in front of my house, I fix it myself, the town's not going to come and fix it.
So just to clarify, I wanted to be very brief, that there have been other recent subdivisions where there were sightline issues and there was a town right-of-way, and when I say a rational nexus-based offsite improvement, it's at the complete expense of the developer.
Correct.
But that would also have been agreement with the landowner who owns the land also.
Well, they don't own the land if the town does. But,
Well, there's a fine line there because I asked that question years ago about getting my grass fixed, and they said that you owe the land, but we have a right of way. So, and Mr. LaRue is shaking his head, so I don't know if he wants to
Yeah,
comment on that.
that depends on how it goes. They won't fix my mailbox when they knock it over either, so.
Mine got smashed.
But,
And it's in the 5-foot right-of-way of the town.
yeah.
You're right.
So, yeah, I just wanted to point out that in the public hearing on the 17th, it was stated that that was private property of the abutter, and according to all the evidence that I've seen, it is actually in the town right away, and the town has the right to improve it as necessary. Are you finished? Other comments?
I would like to hear a comment regarding that from Mr. LaRue, engineer, if I could.
Regarding the off-site improvement,
Yes, please.
people are not robots. We're not all the same. We have different personalities, different perspectives. So you have to take every situation as a unique situation because that neighborhood is a little bit more dense. Houses are closer to the road. So there's a lot of maintenance tied into your residence that's part of the right-of-way in that setting. Whereas if you're in a rural situation where houses are bigger, farther off the road, there's stone walls, there's tree lines, things that are less obstructive to working out an arrangement to do an off-site improvement. I think that's the best way I could put it, that you have different dynamics in different parts of town where you could reasonably do an off-site improvement to attain site distance where there's a rural road and trees in the way. You can cut the trees, maybe move a wall back, where houses are already on the road and there's a strip of lawn and you want to significantly adjust a grade or a slope with walls or whatnot, that can be a little bit more intrusive to that homeowner. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Grenies?
Nope.
I think, Mr. Chase, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've been on the board for quite a while, and the shared driveway is not a perceived problem. In my years on the board, I've seen many disputes over shared driveways. During our site walk, one of them was actually borne out as many of the members that came for the site walk were parked in that second driveway that would have been the shared driveway. So if the house in the front is having company or gathering of some sort, the first thing they do is they park in that shared driveway, and now we have a problem, despite your maintenance issues and all that. I've seen cases come here for remediation. They wound up in court. They've been nothing but an issue, and that's why the town got away from them. That is a real problem. It's not a perceived problem. Shared driveways have been a problem for a long time, and that's why that ordinance went into effect. After the site walk, if the board were to grant either one of the waivers, the one that would be the less problematic would be the site distance waiver, in that heading south on Mount Pleasant from Lenox, the site distance is good. Heading north from East Broadway, you've just come around a corner, you're climbing a hill, the chances of you reaching a speed that would be unsafe is a lot less than the problems that will occur with a shared driveway. That is the way that I see it from my experience and what I've seen. If this had been on a rural road somewhere where the speeds are up there, cars are traveling at speed or above, I would say both of them would be a concern. But where this is in such a congested area, downtown, heading north, it's difficult to get to any kind of speed that would be unsafe. I would say that if either one of the two ordinance or waivers would be considered, it would be the site distance waiver. I agree with Mr. Granisi. The shared driveways are a real issue that we have seen in the past, and I do not support that at all.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Haley?
Yes, so there's been a lot of talk about our land development control regulations Could we just get a brief overview on, what's looked at when those are updated? Because there's also a point made that they haven't been updated in 35 years, but on the cover of the one that were issued is September 20th, 2023, and I see on May 19th, 2021, section 17026 was updated. So I don't know if Mr. LaRue or Mr. can talk about the LDCR, and because there's been some discrepancy over the federal to the Derry standards.
There are a lot of different scenarios that they paint out in the AASHTO standards, and I haven't perused that in much depth lately, but what I've found is the regulation that we have hasn't been disputed in most circumstances. We've been able to get it to work with the 6-inch. I think it's a good barometer for maintaining a good, safe line in the densely populated area as well as the rural section. You have a little bit more difficulty actually in this situation, in the densely, in the pre-existing developments of Derry, where things really don't meet a lot of today's standards. And it just compounds. When we go out to rural sections and I have to double check site distance, there are a lot of circumstances where I say the surveyor completely blew it on certain shots, and I have to make sure and be vigilant and make sure that we do that. I think it's important to maintain that standard. I've looked at it and I've left it alone, and if the board wishes to see it loosened, we can reconsider it. But I think in almost every circumstance we've been able to achieve it, and it's a good regulation. It was in existence before. I don't think it's that far out of line with what we're trying to do is to maximize safety.
Thank you.
Other members of the board have comments, questions, thoughts?
Public hearing still open.
Yes, but the board discussion happens in public hearing these days. I guess I'd like to maybe poll those board members who haven't asked any questions to just elicit, what you're currently thinking on how we might get to a completion on this application.
I think Mr. Chase hit it right on square on the head in terms of the site distance. I think if there's a safety issue, if someone is turning up the street going that fast, it's not the child chasing the ball that's the problem. It's the person achieving that speed within 50 feet. And in terms of a shared driveway, I can certainly see it being a problem, but then again, it's good fences make good neighbors. I can see how even folks who live side by side but don't have a shared resource can have an issue. So are we going to legislate to a certain case, a one-off, or are we going to say, well, we have the ability to develop and there's one issue which is common within the neighborhood? So I can understand the argument to grant both these waivers. But I do understand the concerns, so I'm willing to hear out both sides.
Mr. Feinauer, do you have any thoughts?
I actually have several. I support Mr. Chase's position on the shared driveway to accommodate this. I don't think it's right. I've had several discussions with George about this. I don't think it's right that we lower the site distance to accommodate this project. I don't think it's right to the owners of 3 Mount Pleasant that we take away what little lawn that they have to accommodate a house. And out of every project that I've been able to sit on for the last 2 years as an alternate and as a full-time member, I'm really having a hard time understanding this declared hardship and the requested waivers when it's been self-imposed. I want to is not a hardship. Because I want to is not a hardship. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Fisherman, do you have thoughts?
I'm not inclined to have an issue with the shared driveway, but I feel that the site distance is not something that we should move. Mr. Feinhauer's last comment there has me considering something about the hardship waiver requirements, and I've also been looking into, how those are specifically defined. So, like I said, I don't have the history and understanding of the exact issues with the shared driveway, seeing as it's a common practice in that neighborhood. It seems like something the neighbors are able to work out. I don't believe that moving our town's measurement for the sight line is a wise call.
That's why we don't say much, we just disagree on everything.
Ms. Lloyd, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with what some of the other board members said about the shared driveway. I think that if it has been the town's prerogative to move away from those because history has shown that there's pervasive issues with shared driveways, then I think that, we should stick to our guns there. In terms of the site distance, it also makes me nervous. These are in place for a reason, so I'm in agreement with a number of the board members on having major concerns on both.
But you got to use the mic, though. Come up here, John. And give your name and address for the record.
I'm going to answer everything, too. I'm John Fillion, FW Holdings. I'm owner and partner of the property of
Is your little green light on?
Underneath.
I don't know. You don't hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. John Fillion, FW Holdings, with my partner here on the said property. And I hear about the shared driveways, and I don't like them either. But this shared driveway doesn't stick 20 or 30 feet in, where a lot of these new shared driveways happen to have. We're talking 10 feet. It's not a major deal. We're talking two smaller homes. We're not talking 3,000 square foot homes being joined together. And if you want, the ability to have its own driveway is there, and the site distance becomes even better closer to that area. And what I'm not sure who mentioned the road, but when you're coming off Broadway and taking a left on the Mount Pleasant, you're not getting up to a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And if you are, to your point, this is the driver's fault, not so much the people running into the street with a ball. That's going to happen, and then danger is going to be there right off the bat. So that's just my piece.
Mr. LaRue, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to put on the record, and I mentioned it in one of the conditions regarding the utility poles, where it's configured, and the proposed water and sewer utilities, we have to maintain 10 feet between those. And because of the restriction of width of the newly created lot, it's going to be difficult you can't put utilities up against a utility pole. So I just wanted for the record to denote that we're going to need an easement at least for one of the utilities to go around the existing pole. Obviously, if the pole is moved, Eversource is going to require its own easement to move poles, and they've already have put in for a pole replacement up the street, and it's a very difficult street to move poles in, but they still have to stay in the alignment of the overhead, so they have to usually move to a property corner. So it would have to go to one corner or another, and we just have to logistically get that finalized as part of the final approval for whatever direction you choose to vote in.
So let me see if I can clarify. You're saying that because of the required spacing between water and sewer lines underground,
Yes.
that
That it may have-
regardless of what the board may want to do or the applicant may want to do, because of the limited frontage, the pole's going to have to move?
Well, the pole may they may require the pole be replaced or moved on their own Eversource, because they're going to have to supply service to the new house in the back, and typically, they install a new drop pole or have to install a brand-new pole to allow for that drop to occur.
So, I don't know, it seems to me it would be sort of a material matter as to the disposition of the pole, because the cost of moving the pole just to maintain the regulation for separate driveways is one of the hardships that has been claimed, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if the pole has to move anyway,
There will be an additional pole, or that pole will be replaced regardless.
Additional.
I don't know that we have that answer tonight, but
But I'm 95% certain
A fact that we should
based
probably
on
think about.
experience.
So,
Mr. Chairman, just comment about the pole, sorry. It's on the plan, it says relocate utility pole per utility company, so they've probably already looked at that, so they know that pole's being moved anyway. It's on the plan.
okay, and where,
It's on sheet 204, there's a note. Relocate utility pole per utility company. We discussed this at the last meeting also. And we talked about that at the site walk.
all right, so does it, is there any indication of where it gets relocated to,
Oh,
or just somewhere else?
They have some flexibility along the main line. It could be the corner, if you decide to have separate driveways, it could be the corner between the newly created driveway and the existing driveway, or it could be towards the fence with the abutter's driveway
I guess
down street.
The question I
downhill.
want to ask, and I don't know that we have absolute information, because we know that it wants to be relocated, but we don't know where, is the fact that the pole is in most likelihood going to be relocated change your concern about the separate driveway at all, to any degree?
So, yeah, and I'd like if I could answer a lot of the questions that were raised, because I have some information that's valuable. But on the pole itself, we don't actually know where the utility would put the pole. And it becomes an issue depending on why the pole is being moved and when. That will dictate who pays for it as well. So if we have to move it at a certain time because of our driveway, we do have to pay for it. And, you know, while I understand everyone's concern about shared driveways, I'm hearing both sides of it, and I don't know the nature of your disputes, but we do this a lot. Every commercial property has shared driveways. You address it with an easement. I would venture to say, if I had to guess, that most of your disputes are from historic shared driveways that have no written easement. And we'd be happy to let the town review the easement as well, but we would obviously do that as a matter of course. So while I don't want to belittle the concern, it's something that I have addressed hundreds of times in my career, and I don't think of that as being a problem at all. Like I said, I mean, think of all of your commercial properties that share a driveway. It's very common to have cross-access easements, which are far more complicated. This is very simple. And it's very easy for me to imagine, again, when you don't have that easement, yeah, people are going to have disputes all the time. I'm a little surprised you entertain them bringing them to you. It's not really your problem. But just the same, that's not something that's very difficult to handle. One thing I also wanted to talk about is the idea, which I think several board members are sort of thinking the same, the idea of improving the site distance by cutting down the lawn in front of the house next to us. That theoretically that's possible, but that's a highly speculative solution. The town has to agree to that. The planning board doesn't have the authority to do that. That's an incredibly lengthy process, I would imagine, if they even say yes. We don't know that they would say yes. Second, it becomes expensive. You all were at the site walk, and you saw that a retaining wall would have to be built there to accomplish that as well. Third, what benefit are we really getting? You know, we keep talking about this regulation that the federal government and the state government is no longer following. And the reasoning for it is, well, it's what we've always done. And I wasn't, and I'm sorry if I misspoke, but I wasn't saying your entire subdivision regulations are 35 years old, but it's that particular provision about site distance is based on the AASHTO standards that are 35 years old. And it's a specific reference in the regulations. So it's not, I'm not saying the entire regulation is 35 years old. So, you know, to say that, you know, we should keep it the same way, everyone else has decided not to. So that's a hard justification to make that, hey, it's what we've been doing, so it's okay. That's a dangerous justification to make. We've done a lot of things in history on that sort of thinking, and they turned out wrong. A couple of other points, although most of them are sort of included there. The idea of a self-imposed hardship. So we have very specific case law that self-imposed hardship is not any reason to deny a variance, a waiver, or anything. A lot of people used to say that in the past, and then what we start realizing is you can call just about every hardship self-imposed. That's not a reason to not grant a variance. That's exactly the opposite of what the legislature was thinking in creating waivers and variances, which variance law has been around for over 100, or no, sorry, not 100 years in this state, but decades for sure. So, I mean, think about it. Many people buy a property that needs a variance. That's self-imposed. That doesn't mean you deny the variance because they bought it, because the end result of that is that, okay, so if a self-imposed variance is, self-imposed hardship is a reason to deny the variance, then no one else can ever buy that property and get a variance. And if the variance is needed to use it, then you've just frozen that property, which gets back to the discussion we were having in my presentation, where that's not the intent of land use regulations. So again, so every single buyer of a property that needs a variance is self-imposed, right? But the law is not intending to say those people cannot apply for a variance. We have different criteria for a variance. We have criteria for a waiver, both in state law. Self-imposed is no part of that criteria whatsoever. It logically doesn't follow. So I think that addresses most of the discussion and questions. And from an overview, you know, it's our preference to do the shared driveway for the reasons I said. It's more cost effective. It's more attractive. It's less pavement. It's less wasteful in terms of resources. Excuse me. It's better looking for the neighborhood. And I don't see the benefit in having two driveways. I understand the concerns that have been articulated, the disputes among people. That's what I was hearing as the concern, and I get that. That is a problem, but it's not a problem for the board or the town at all, and it's a problem that can easily be addressed with an easement agreement. We would have to do that. There's no way I would move forward without an easement agreement in both of the deeds. That's just a matter of course.
So I guess we're back to the board. In polling the board, I had a wide variety of opinions. Some folks want no waivers, some folks favor one, some folks favor the other. So can we discuss our way to a more common agreement, or do we just have somebody make a motion and vote it up or down?
Well, Mr. Chairman, so I heard from the developer and I heard from the attorney that they're willing to put a second driveway in, but because of cost, they're asking for the waiver. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Not just cost. Cost is one factor.
Okay, but you're willing, but both of you said you're willing to put a driveway in.
I think if that's all we can do.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to clarify
But
that.
I do want to stress, actually, cost is not the most important factor. I
Right.
don't know that the cost is huge for that. It's significant, but it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, I don't know if you were at the site walk. I don't remember.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think of how that's going to look, and I don't see the benefit. So the answer to your question is cost is a factor, yes. It's not the only factor, and it's probably not the most significant factor.
Okay. Thank you for kind of answering my question.
You're welcome.
Because I know the owner of the property did, he said that he would be willing to put a second driveway in. I just want that on the record. Thank you.
Any further thoughts?
So we have to close the public hearing to move on, correct?
Yeah, I thought we would get all the discussion out, and then if we're ready for motions and votes, we can close the public hearing.
I have a question then.
Mr. Chair? Oops, sorry.
So in the gentleman's analysis, I'm curious what the board's understanding or position is of the analysis that if the shared driveway waiver is granted, then basically the other one is irrelevant. Maybe I'm misinterpreting, the exact, that's not
Well,
the exact language.
as I read it, and you can correct me if I misread it, if we are using the same curb cut that's been there, that predates many of our regulations, it's a, to use the vernacular, a grandfathered situation. And so if we use the shared driveway, therefore the existing driveway location, the issue of site distance, as it is currently stated in the regs, becomes legally moot because of grandfathering.
So despite it being a second parcel, the driveway kind of stands on its own as having been grandfathered in, so to speak.
Is that correct, Mr. Swiniarski?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. O'Connor?
I'm going to ask Mr. Liu to come in on this afterwards, but we still have some of his bullet points that still need to be discussed that are not in the conditional document that we have. One being that if a separate driveway waiver is approved, a driveway construction grading plan in detail must be updated and approved by DPW. So that's got to be there. Surface water runoff shall be mitigated and properly treated within the boundary of map 32, lot 71-1, using best management practices and shown in the final plot. And then the other one is, if either driveway configuration is approved, a utility easement, water or sewer, shall be required to allow for extension of utility services on map 32, lot 71, west of existing utility pole to the extent of surface to new parcel map 3271. Additional easement, additional easement for Eversource may require to relocate existing utility pole or install a new pole of underground services affecting either lot for final easements shall be recorded at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds, and the applicant will be responsible for the cost. So there's still a few more of these that I think need to be addressed, unless Mark can tell us we can wipe these off.
What do you want to discuss? I would include any of those points with whatever situation you vote for a waiver.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, for the record? Just for John. Yeah, like Mark and I had a chance to speak yesterday, so Mark said if the board should waive or not waive what's described in the email, that you make Mark's email, whichever one applies, as your conditions of approval, John. So when you get to the final motion on the up or down on the plan overall, you can include these. And Mark said, depending on which way you want to go with the waivers, there's 5 suggestions how to include all this stuff in the motion to approve.
You either choose the existing driveway with a shared driveway, and all the last 3 bullets will apply to either one of them, if
Okay.
you so choose.
Well, maybe we should just vote on the waivers independently, although I think Mr. Swiniarski has asserted that if we deny both waivers, it makes the lot effectively unbuildable. So they probably won't be happy with that. Are we ready for a vote?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, okay. You have to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
asking,
sorry.
are we ready to close the hearing and have a vote?
Thank you.
Hearing no objection, then I'll fish for a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Malaby, seconded by Mr. Healy to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Okay, so now we're back to where we left off on the 17th, which I guess is discussion and votes on the 2 waiver requests.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant the waiver to LDCR Section 170-26 D2 site distance.
Okay, that's the second one?
The first
It's the
one.
first
yeah.
one.
All right,
But we can,
guess I need to find the, Okay, you're right, that is the first one. So it has been moved by Mr. Malamy to grant a waiver to that section regarding on the site distance calculations. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Healy has seconded. Discussion.
Just one quick question. The site distance is in the town ordinance is airs on a higher standard what the national standard is. Is that what I recall from last week?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so the town standard
Yeah, Mike.
provides a greater safety than what the national standard is. And we would be providing a waiver to decrease the safety buffer that the town has established and abided by for years for this project. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
Yes
think
or no?
Mark explained, yes, Chris.
Okay.
Other discussion? If not, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
No.
Usually give a reason with a no.
Okay. The question I asked earlier was on the review of the LDCR regulations, and it appears that they were reviewed September 20th, 2023. Our town engineer reviewed specific sections, and the current regulations he feels are sufficient for the town, and we've been following those for years, and they haven't been, they haven't been changed. And I don't think we should stray from that with this waiver request.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gruni's?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to say that we should be following state regulations regarding this.
Okay. Ms. Lavoy?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Healy stated.
Okay. Mr. Fishman?
No, I do not believe we should grant the waiver. It's not in accordance with the spirit and the intent of the regulation.
Okay. Mr. Feinauer?
No, we have established ordinance on this in the town. It airs on a higher safety than national standards, and we should adhere to that.
Okay. Mr. Malamy?
yes.
And chair votes no. I think it would be preferable to find another solution that didn't compromise the site distance. Whether or not that eventually gets reviewed is a whole different matter. So was anyone keeping track of the vote count? Because I wasn't.
Yeah, but it's 6-3, and no, 6 noes and 3 yeses.
So 6 noes, 3 yeses, so the waiver is not granted. On the matter of the other waiver,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant a waiver of LDCR Section 170-25A5 general requirements. Each lot shall have its driveway access through its own frontage.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Malaby, seconded by Mr. Chase. With all due respect to everything we've said tonight, that we do occasionally grant waivers for shared driveways, most frequently when the curb cuts are controlled by the state DOT and we can't get to.
So we're in discussion, right, regarding this?
Yep.
So I'm also going to make and I said it earlier for the record, that one of the co-owners of the development said that they would put a second driveway in. So that was my discussion regarding that.
Mr. Chase?
So the other thing that was only mentioned once in this is that going by the shared driveway doesn't increase the safety factor at all, it just grandfathers it.
True.
So what have you really gained by having, now you've got 2 complications instead of 1. Now you've got the problems with the shared driveway, plus you've got the same site distance as you would have had, excuse me, as you would have had with a separate driveway. Because once a separate driveway was brought up to grade and such, the site distance would have been comparable. So now you got 2 problems instead of 1 if you grant this waiver.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
No, as I had stated, all this does is grandfather the site distance, it doesn't improve it, and we have historic accounts of multiple problems with shared driveways, and that's why we did away with them, and for that reason, I vote no.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons Mr. Chase stated.
Okay, Mr. Grenies?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase, and where the, one of the developers and the attorney did say in the affirmative that they'd be willing to put a second driveway in, so I'm voting no because I feel like this waiver was not needed because of his statements.
Mr. O'Connor?
And I'm going to vote no, but I'm in favor of the shared driveway.
Oh, okay. Ms. Lavoy?
I'm going to vote no because I voted no on the site distance variance waiver, and I feel like, as Mr. Chase cited, that it would be grandfathered in with a shared driveway.
Mr. Fishman?
I vote yes to grant the waiver for the shared driveway.
Mr. Feinau?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Malamy?
Yes.
And I will also vote yes because of the unique nature of this neighborhood. So what does that leave us with?
3 yes and 6 no.
Same votes, six against and 3 in favor. So that waiver request is also declined.
George, did you say that the right way? This is yours.
What's that?
Did you say that the right way, or did I just hear you wrong? Could you restate the count?
It was 3 yes and 6 no.
All right, so now the board is left with what we want to do with the application. Are there conditions that we could feel comfortable with, that the applicant would also feel comfortable with, that would allow us to proceed? Anyone have thoughts on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. McGrees?
I have no problem with the site distance, as Mr. Chase said. You know, I actually took pictures. I know, I think, you know, they're in the record. Like Mr. Chase said, you know, I jokingly said, someone can come flying around the corner off of Broadway, take the right and do 90 up the street. But that's where the site distance issue is. It's not coming south. It's going, you know, it's more going north, but when they hit the property, you're probably doing, I think the speed limit is 30 miles an hour on the street, you're probably doing only 15 or 16. So I had no problem with the site distance. I just had the problem with the driveway. So I don't know what the pleasure of the board is or the developer, but I mean, we do need housing in Derry. But I don't know what can be done now, seeing if where the site distance waiver was denied. What does that do to the plan? George?
Well, my understanding, and Mrs. Sears can correct me, and Mr. Liu can chime in as well, if we have requirements in the LDCRs and they are not met, and we do not grant a waiver, we cannot approve the application.
Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, the board can, yeah, if they're not met, then you could, the plan, one way to look at it is it's not an approved plan because you've denied those waivers. I mean, Mark LaRue added some suggestions if you had the separate driveways of, you know, he talked about the East Bend driveway construction grading plan, things like that. But if you can't meet the site distance, that's a key one. I don't know how you can get around that to meet the site distance unless, if Mark has a suggestion on that. But Mark gave a handout today just to try to give some thought.
Right.
Some bullet points, if you will, or talk about it if you do want to approve this with these conditions. He gave you the options of whether it's a separate or a combined driveway. It's easy on the separation of having the two driveways. Mark recommends some suggestions, but on the site distance, that's the key one, because they're going to have to do some site work in order to make that site distance meet our regulations.
And some of the point that I made in this was that the applicant would have to regrade or show on the plan reconstruction that could better the site distance as much as possible within the elements of the maximum and minimum slope requirements from the driveway. Because there is some improvement that could be made. I couldn't tell you what that would achieve exactly, but they both scenarios could be enhanced even without meeting the absolute 6-inch.
Yeah, I guess the question is, I stopped before we did the findings of fact, because the findings of fact probably don't apply in the current situation where we don't have waivers, unless we can come up with conditions of approval that the applicants would find palatable, that would allow us to declare that in the absence of waivers, all the requirements are still met.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure within the area that we're looking at, we can still do that. The only thing is, by the fact that if this is rejected tonight, which appears it's going to be, is that the architects and the designers have 30 days to come back to the board.
No. Planning board, John, is 30 days to Rockingham Superior Court. Zoning board gives you the
But
ability to
choice
come
is
back.
only the Superior Court
That's
or the
correct, yeah.
Housing Board.
Yeah, that would be correct.
Yep. Well, if we could find a reasonable path to yes, that would be preferable. I guess the question is, do we see such a path via technical means?
Well, I try to outlay the path based on Mark LaRue's nice work that he did on those 5 bullet points, because there was some, I thought personally there's some solutions there that would have been taken care of based on easements, recording, deeds, and so forth, and pretty much covered the town. But I don't know if we can go back and redo these whole things, unless somebody in the majority can do a motion to reconsider. That's, I think, the only way we can bring this back up. You have to be in a motion in favor to have a rehearing as a former state rep.
Yeah, no, we could do that. We could, if people were convinced that there were conditions of approval that would satisfy their concerns, we could certainly do that. I don't know if that's the case.
Do you mind, Mark, you were saying that site work could be done that could potentially improve the site distance, or is that, did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
Is that on the shared driveway circumstance or in the separate driveways?
Both.
So,
Mr. Greenes?
So, Ms. LaRue, so if I'm just asking a question. So if there was a 2 driveways there, they could do we could put a condition of approval there for them to do some work for the site distance, and that would, then they wouldn't have to ask for the LDCR 17026D2, correct?
I don't know if they could achieve the absolute 6-inch benchmark, but it would be improved. Because if you recall at the site walk, there was a depressed area where the property would be fronting the street, and then there was the driveway that immediately sloped back towards the lot. Now, in our regulations for sloping, you're allowed to increase 3% for the first 10 feet and 5%, but you really wouldn't want to increase beyond the 10%, the 10 feet, because the lot does slope back. But just to lift that up a few inches would help, I guess is what I'm saying. And on the other driveway, if there was an adjustment on a cleaning up by the fence, and from what I saw, and doing the 10%, 3% from that point, it may be at least equal to what the existing driveway is, maybe better. And it's a difficult achievement just because of that little hump in the road looking downhill.
Slippery slope.
Yeah, it's just,
But so what I'm getting is just, we could have made that condition of approval if the 17026D2 passed.
that
to
the
make
site
it-
distance.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Did you have a thought, Ms. Lavoy?
I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. You're saying that we could make that a condition, we could have made that a condition of approval to the site distance waiver or to the application?
No, to the approval, to the conditional approval of the application.
If we approve
would
the
add-
the
Okay,
site
we're having-
distance
Add a
waiver,
condition.
we could have made a condition of approval that it would have lessened the nonconformity by raising the driveway so you get a higher vantage point for,
If we did approve the section 17026D2, which is a site distance. So we could have, if that was approved, then we could have still made corrections to the site distance. It still wouldn't adhere
Wouldn't meet the muster, but it would get
to our
closer.
LDCR, but it would make it a lot better. That's
Right.
why I asked the question to Mr. LaRue. We've had that issue before. I've been on the board 19 years.
and,
I've
you know,
run into this
we are
before, so-
speculating, 'cause there's been no engineering done, but I think there might be some marginal improvement somewhere between doing nothing to the grassy knoll and cutting it down to the point where you need a retaining wall. It's a knoll, I mean, you take a foot off the top of it, doesn't change the slope that much, but it might, in combination with the driveway, improve the site distance significantly. But an engineer would have to determine that.
So now you're impacting the neighbor by going in that direction, by cutting down their front lawn.
Well, shaving a
that
piece
town.
off it and regrading it, yeah, maybe.
If I was living there and that was my place and you're gonna do that, that would kind of leave me a little upset.
Understood. It is a compact neighborhood.
But, Mr. Chair, but I also, I see what Mr. Feinau is saying, but I believe what Mr. LaRue said, if they raise it up, they wouldn't have to touch the neighbor's property at all, correct?
Well, they probably still wouldn't achieve it, but it would be improved, and it probably wouldn't necessitate having to alter the neighbor's property.
Thank you.
Is there a way to have a determination from Eversource as to where the pole would go? Because
No.
that's a factor.
From what I
I've been
understand,
asking
they're
that
a
for
law
years.
unto themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry to belabor the point, but if we wanted to make improvements to the site distance with the understanding that we probably wouldn't reach the ultimate standard, we would need to, and I think someone said, we would need to re-investigate, somebody would have to make a motion to,
You have to reconsider the vote on that waiver, and if we voted yes to grant that waiver, and then we made conditions to the development that would raise the driveway and then further reduce the noncompliance, we would be in a better situation. But since we have failed to waive it, and based on all the evidence in front of us tonight, no one can say that if we raise the driveway 6 inches, it's going to meet the regulation. We think it will be closer to meeting it. Is that correct, Mr. LaRue?
Yes.
right?
So we've spent 2 evenings here, we've spent 2 evenings here, and we spent at least an hour walking around. I think the board made an informed decision tonight with the vote that was made. It should stand.
Well, yeah. If no one wants to investigate the other opportunities, then we are sort of left with the only opportunity is to make revised findings of fact that indicate that in the absence of waivers, the project does not meet the requirements for development in Derry, and then we will have to, instead of approve the application, we have to deny the application. What happens after that? We can all speculate, but that would be the end of this proceeding. All right, so I'm not hearing any other suggestions, so I guess that's what we need to do. Would someone like to, off the cuff, make a motion of finding as a fact consistent with our disapproval of the waivers?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the proposed development would allow for providing additional housing opportunities in the community as the high demand for housing in both Derry and the state of New Hampshire continues. The existing neighborhood is one of Derry's oldest and predates our zoning ordinance requirements, which were adopted in 1946.
Yeah, so Mr. O'Connor, that findings of fact is inconsistent with our votes on the waivers. Because that's a finding of fact that supports an approval. We need a finding of fact that would support a disapproval. That seems to be where the board is headed. See Mr. Greeny scribbling there.
Who's squiggling?
Well, I'm not for that, for something else.
All right, so I don't like to make motions, so I'm going to try to elicit a motion from one of my board members that would describe the reasons, the findings of fact. It could be as simple as having refused to grant necessary waivers. The finding of fact is that this lot does not comply with our regulations, and that might be it.
Make sure you're right, because if this goes to court, we have to make sure that.
Exactly.
Yep, good point. I'll so move.
Okay. Hopefully, that will be clear from the tape. We basically are making findings of fact that we disapproved waivers that were necessary to be in compliance, and therefore we are likely, we're proposing to disapprove the application. So you'll move that, Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Feinauer. Poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
No.
Ms. Lavoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chair, approved pursuant to.
Nope. We got to write a whole new script. What is the script for disapproval? We just vote no on this?
Have to vote, you have to make the motion, and then you deny.
All right.
I do.
And so if we're planning to vote no on it, we don't really care how many conditions we add? Is that true?
I think you should say. These conditions are your standard conditions that we do for any plan, so my suggestion would be just read that as it's shown there, and then you can vote up or down on that, because this does not include any of the waiver votes that you took previously.
Okay.
Okay?
So Mr. O'Connor, go, continue, please.
Okay. Mr. Chair, approving pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman numeral I, completed application with the following conditions: subject to owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by the town engineer, establish appropriate escrow as required to complete the project, establish escrow for the setting of bounds, certify the bounds have been set, subject to receipt of applicable state and local permits relating to the project. The project will be connected to town water and sewer, subject to the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry. of deeds. This includes a $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar and the notice of decision, and obtain written approval from the planning director/designee that the GIS disk is received and operable and complies with LDCR Sections 17024-14.c. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. O'Connor, seconded by Mr. Malaby to grant conditional approval. I assume there's no more discussion? Oh, there is discussion.
Discussion, yes. Oh, should we add some of these for Mr. LaRue for the record?
I don't,
think it's necessary.
it's probably not necessary in this case, no, Dave.
All right, I want to add one then.
Yeah,
I just want to
that's fine.
add one, and I'm trying to figure out the right wording. I want to add it, something about the question I asked Mr. LaRue about the driveway. If they were to raise a driveway specs per the town engineer's requirements, that would enhance a little bit of the sight distance on the road.
Yes.
I want to add that one to it.
Okay. Is the mover and seconder okay with that? We'll
No
consider that a
objection.
friendly amendment. Any further discussion? And I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
No. Due to the failure of either waiver to be granted, the submitted application does not meet the standards of our ordinances and therefore cannot be approved.
Mr. Healy?
No, for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Grenice?
I'm voting yes.
Okay. Mr. O'Connor?
I'll vote yes.
Okay. Ms. Lavoy?
I vote no for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Fishman?
I vote no. Without the waivers, we can't proceed.
Mr. Feinauer?
No for the same reasons as Mr. Chase.
Mr. Malaby?
No, even though I voted in the affirmative for both waiver, I don't believe this can proceed.
And I will also vote no for the same reasons. I think it's unfortunate, but technically, we cannot approve this plan without at least one of those waivers. Okay? And so you have 30 days to appeal, and I'm sure you know what the appeal avenues are. Sorry. Any other business? We were going to do, let me find my agenda. We're going to do board member comments. Try to take it back to a more festive atmosphere if we can.
So can we start roasting him now?
Well, whatever you.
All right, so,
How long do you guys take for the written decision?
What's that?
How long do you take for the written decision?
Probably within the written decision, 3-4 days? 3-4 days.
all right, so I'll start that off, unless
Yes,
you want to
please.
start, Mr. Chair. So, George, or should I say Mr. Sioris, planning director of 40 years. You know, it's been a pleasure. I got on, moved into Derry 19 and a half years ago. I think I was in Derry 8 months, and I got an alternate to planning board. Met you. I think Dave was on the board, I think, when I got on.
Yeah.
In Evans and a lot of the old people.
I
Yeah,
replaced her.
learned a lot. Ginny Roach. Actually, I think, Dave, you were the chairperson. And then
At various
Ginny, the
times,
vice
yeah.
chair, yeah, and then Ginny Roach. But, you know, George, you know, we became friends outside of here, and, you know, you taught me a lot. You know, I just want to say thank you very much for what you did for the town. You know, and then I did a stint of 9.5 years, I think it was, as chairman of the board. You helped me out immensely with a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and especially with you and Elizabeth. When it came to sitting up here and talking to the town council and, you know, and putting everything together and just everything, you know, you getting development in and you helping Derry and bringing Derry to what it is today. You know, for all the time, you know, that you've been in here, you know, you brought a lot of economic development in, a lot of the projects that are still in the pipeline today, you know, thanks to you and thanks to your experience. And then, you know, the whole TRC, you know, you brought to the board. And I remember being up here and we get accolades from builders coming in and, they would complain about other towns, and they would say, George, you and your team and the planning board, Derry, Derry outbeats everybody else, and that's because of you. So I just want to say personally, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your retirement. I know I do, and I know some other people on the board are retired, and they do. And I just want to say, last night, the council meeting, please watch the council meeting. It was good. Chairperson Aaron Spencer wrote a proclamation that all of us signed in the town council for Mr. Cioras, and the town council presented him with a beautiful chair that was made out in Gardner, and it has the in Boston at the town seal. I suggested maybe a rocking chair. I said, George can knit. But then, then I thought, no. I says, it'd be nice to have a nice little comfortable chair that he can sit and read the Union Leader and look out his window, as property, and sip a nice bourbon or something, and, enjoy life. So I just want to say thank you very much for everything. Appreciate it. I hope that sometime after you get settled in your retirement, that you'll be before us, your name will come before us on the town council to be a member of the planning board. We could use your experience, but I just want to say thank you very much. And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everything you did for the town.
Thank you, David, much appreciated. And likewise, thank you very much.
Okay, my turn. I'm going to spin off a little bit on what Dave said, because he captured a lot of areas. And being former chair, and being on here for almost 18 years also, is the fact that the thing that Dave mentioned is the architects, the engineers, developers came in recent years and said how much they can get done, that Derry is one of the best areas that they make their presentations to. And a lot of that is to George and doing the TRC, pulling that together, getting all the bumps out of the driveway, no pun intended, and moving forward. So George, knowing that he's retired, living in Derry, we do have a couple of alternate positions on the board, and so we could see you maybe in a couple of weeks.
We'll think about it. You know where I all live.
Thank
You all
you.
know where I live,
We
I
know
should
where you
say,
live.
so maybe we'll think about it. I need a little bit of a break, but thank you, John. I appreciate that as well.
So I'm not going to repeat too much of what other folks said. I deeply appreciate all of George's guidance and institutional knowledge and experience over the years. I was on the planning board back when we were meeting in the courthouse in the Adams Memorial Building. And so we had a lot of good times together. And so one of the things that I think you can say about George is he knows, or he knew, Jeff Taylor.
I did know Jeff Taylor, yes.
Yep. And one of the other kudos, I used to go to the legal seminars for the NHMA every year back when they held them in person. And one session was talking about the development process and the application process and how long it takes in some towns. And I think the quote was, "You guys in Derry do it right. You do it almost at light speed." And so that's kudos to George, the staff, as well as the planning board over the years to be development and business friendly, which obviously helps the tax base here in Derry. So I wish you well and in your retirement, and have a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you outside of work sometime, maybe with David, and we can have a beer or something. So thank you, David.
George, I'd like to say thanks for getting me here. I still don't know how you talked me into this between you and Jody.
Chris, yes.
I'll tell you, I've learned a lot. I'm still waiting for the interview that I thought I was going to have after I sent in that application. I'm still waiting. But thank you. This has been eye-opening. I actually look forward to this, and I hate not being here when I'm on travel and I can't make it to even be online. So I hope to see you out there somewhere. Still have the standard invite to go flying when you're ready, and I know I'll see you around town.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I knew Chris's parents when I started here. His parents were wonderful people, and they were some of the first people I spoke to. And his mom and dad would come in the office, and we would talk about they were townies, so all the history of Derry and what happened. I'm the new kid on the block, and they were some of the nicest people, and so I appreciate that. And I said, Chris, you're the next generation, so come on the board. And so thank you.
I'm accused regularly of being a townie too, George.
Yes, I say that in a nice way. I didn't say that in a bad way. Thank you, Chris.
George, I'll just say thank you so much for your service to this town. It's a wonderful place to live and to do business, and you've obviously made a huge impact on making that possible for so many people. So thank you. You've been nothing but wonderful in the short time that we've been able to work together. Made it very easy to transition into this, and always have a good answer on questions. So thank you. You will be missed.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate it. You're going to be a new great member, and I'm glad you came on board, and we had our discussions. But thank you for the short time, and I'm still around, so, maybe I'll pop in every once in a while. So
That'd be
thank
great.
you.
Thank you, George.
Yep.
As somebody who's new to Derry and new to New Hampshire, I've just been really grateful to you and your staff for making the process of coming onto this board just very welcoming and very easy, and people are so helpful. I joined as an alternate, but I've, been in a voting seat every meeting since I started. So the learning curve's been steep, but I'm just really grateful to you and your staff.
Thank you, Bree. I'm going to give you an A+ because you had a challenge tonight. And I thought you did very well, seriously. So thank you. And like Brian, you'll like it. When you get to work on the subcommittees eventually, and like the board will tell you, the veterans, you can work on ordinances and regulations and help write some of the regulations when you see some of the good projects come through. And you'll drive by there one day and say, I worked on that regulation that has a nice building out there or something. So you'll appreciate that part of it.
I believe it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe everyone on the board has received their invitation to the soiree on the 29th, so we'll get a second bite at this apple.
Oh, yes. The 29th, Caroline, to her credit, and Dave and Sheila Bodenrader and Doug Brown and IT and others have put a retirement party. It's going to be in this room Thursday, August 29th. Very informal from 4 to 6 in the afternoon. We'll be up here, so if you want to stop by, I appreciate that. And I do want to say one thing with Dave Granessi. I was given the resumes like I was given Brian's and Brittany's, which I was very impressed. And I knew Chris anyway a little bit. But when Brian Chiricello, the town council, showed me Dave Granessi's resume, he said, what do you think? This guy looks like he might be a good member. And it said on there, Suffolk County Sheriff's Department down in Boston. So when Dave came in, he came in that doorway like at 6:45 before the meeting, and all I saw this guy step up, stood like this in the back of him, kind of like scoped the room like this. And I said, that's got to be the sheriff guy, because I didn't know what he looked like. It's a little intimidating, and then I looked over and I said, yeah, he looks like he could be a sheriff. And then he came up and introduced himself. So. But
I
here we
remember
are.
that. That's funny.
That was a true story, because I didn't know what you looked like. I only had you on paper, so.
And I got interviewed by the then town council.
Yeah, so thank you. Again, I thank everybody. I've had a great career. I've known Randy a long time too with the fire department over the years, and Randy and I started the same year, I think, Randy, or
2 years before.
two before. So we're kind of the old timers, but I thank you again. It's been a great career.
Very old.
I hope I've done some good stuff, and I try to be fair with folks. And again, I thank the staff on the second floor, particularly in the fire and police departments that I work with in public works and code enforcement too. And again, I hope I didn't forget anybody. And so thank you again. I've enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to retiring.
All right. We got plans to sign. I need
Yes,
a
it's
motion
getting
to
late.
adjourn.
Wait, nobody else, right? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And I think seeing it's George, I think seeing it's George's last meeting, even though he'll be in the office for a couple more days, I think if we are done with our business, I think he should make the motion to adjourn the last meeting.
Yeah, here.
Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting of August 13th, 2024. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Oh, Mr. O'Connor, second it? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed, meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.